Hello, Hugh Mungus whats and whatnots. This is Hugh Mungus what 912. I will be doing an analysis on a particular individual in this situation, digging deep into the mind and pattern of someone who thinks the whole world is out to get them when really they've convinced themselves of that. We are going to observe the Perpetual Victim. The Perpetual Victim is an interesting species to scrutinize, as its ranks have grown in number since the feminist identity politic-driven rhetoric of the last 5 years has also found its way into the tendrils of many different media, including video games, journalism, and even movies to an extent. You could say that I'm in fact implying causation with correlation, but do not forget this. A perpetual victim of this caliber usually comes with the caveat of being a woke individual per se. One who sees through the wool and the blinders of our society and knows what monstrosity lays underneath supposedly innocent flesh. These perpetual victims have called out the patriarchy, shown countless times how white, male, cisgendered people have privilege, and how internalized racism seeps through seemingly innocuous acts like wearing silly costumes or playing a video game. These perpetual victims have the glasses from the movie They Live, where only they have the ideological lens to see the wolf in sheep's clothing, and surprisingly enough, without any forethought on their part, without any evidence to support the claim, people don't believe anything they say. This is where we come to the focus of our perpetual victim, Zarna Joshi. Zarna Joshi is the most recent strain in a number of perpetual victims whom know what they are spouting is absolute dog shit, but want to use their perpetual victimhood to draw morality from other people where it wouldn't be otherwise, through crocodile tears and woeful cries about how society ignores the plights of said person. Not only that, this perpetual victim uses said victimhood to also draw money, as being constantly afraid of the patriarchy also helps drive a check, as people will no doubt give money as pity for your horrible experience, no matter how manufactured that experience may be. Zarna Joshi, for all intents and purposes, was merely another SJW sneer who got her titties in a bunch about something completely silly, until recently where she made a YouTube account of 4 videos describing the experience she dealt with. Another thing about a perpetual victim that rings true is that perpetual victims will no doubt try to spin the story of their acclaim to draw more pity from other people, despite the fact that the video in question involving our great shitlord Hugh Mungus what speaks the contrary. Perpetual victims are, in a way, similar to the pathological liar. No matter how the evidence or reality stacks against them, there is an alternate reality that which they can sink into to ignore said reality. Let's investigate this wonderful gem of a human being, shall we?
My name is Zarna, and I'm doing this video because we need to talk. It's become clear to me that a great deal of us suffer from the illness of patriarchy, and it's not just the men who suffer.
Before I begin to explain the number of layers of which a perpetual victim will try to weasel their way out of being responsible for throwing sexual assault charges on the mere mention of a dad joke, let's go into how said patriarchy hurts men. See, you would think that a system designed to benefit men would make sure that men don't have to deal with any hardships. But in the mind of Zarna, she has convinced herself that a system designed to benefit men also hurts them too somehow. She is right that said system is hurting men, such as with divorce settlements, conviction rates, custody of children, and castration, but says system being patriarchal is subjective at best and it's honest at worst. Let's listen more, shall we?
Women can be patriarchal too.
Women? Really? But why would they be patriarchal? Towards who? Other women?
Notice that Zarna automatically assumes that the comment in question is a woman, because one aspect of a perpetual victim is that they will apply everything that someone does to themselves, so in doing so, make the person guilty by the association that they themselves associate with. Also, noting that the graph in question does not have a citation and looks like it was made in Microsoft Excel for a few minutes makes me believe as Zarna told this out of her ass, but let me give her the benefit of the doubt. It is that careful scrutiny of a situation could be patriarchal to Zarna, or she has inflated the numbers to make it seem as though people accuse rape victims by including those who have been sexually assaulted, so to speak, or verbally harassed. There is no way of knowing, and knowing a perpetual victim, you best be careful to take everything they say with a grain of salt, for they want any reason to play the victim, such as this, with this handcrafted graft.
So many things in our system today come from patriarchy, including racism, colonialism, capitalism, classism, and of course, sexism.
Notice that Zarna does not include one specific detail about what things come from our current system, and that she includes capitalism and colonialism as aspects of patriarchy. This could be that Zarna is a cultural Marxist who believes that every job should be paid exactly the same, from a nuclear physicist to a burger flipper at McDonald's. But it could also imply that Zarna believes that equality of outcome trumps equality of opportunity. In a capitalist system, everyone has the opportunity to work any job, and as a result, the consequence of said freedom comes with not being so well off, and women not earning as much as a result of working part-time jobs more often, and only holding a majority demographic in one of the 10 top-paying jobs will result in said disparity. Colonialism is an ironic thing for her to point out, being an Indian who moved to Seattle I'm sure to get a good raking of that capitalist patriarchy dollars that wouldn't be available if she stayed in Mumbai, for she is knowingly colonizing herself with the Western ideals of America, as the comment she highlighted implied.
Wow, she thinks she knows everything. Guess all these experts with their degrees can just go home. One thing to remember, though, it's hard to see something when we're really close to it. We have to step back sometimes, look at a system critically to see what others might be seeing. I wonder if she's done that.
Hello, creepy, faceless man with a yellow, broken teeth. I thank you for making a complete straw man out of the natural reaction to Zarna freaking out about a guy saying Hugh Mungus when pining him for a name, and not getting the idea of a joke. You have demonstrated not that Zarna is right in some regard, but that she is more wrong for coming into a completely innocuous incident with a narrative in mind.
I'm a woman of color, so I'm going to talk about my experience. But many other marginalized people, such as indigenous peoples and queer and transgender people and gender non-conforming people, will have their own thoughts on this also.
Zarna is digging into a neat little emotional feel-good invention called virtue signal, which involves characterizing yourself as someone who speaks out for all the voiceless people, of which devolve into plain demographics, despite the fact that she has yet to demonstrate even one specific person in mind. A good example of this is the new Ghostbusters movie, which kowtowed on the idea that including an all-female cast would speak to all women, despite the fact that the movie was so awful in doing so that it just merely made its money back, and was one of the most disliked videos in terms of its trailer when it came out. Also, while I am still giving her the benefit of the doubt, with these simplistically made pie charts, she doesn't seem to realize that queer and transgender people are likely to commit suicide more likely as a result of the gender dysphoria she glosses over for the sake of making me, a cisgender white male, guilty somehow by inferring that cisgender people are to blame. Another layer of the perpetual victim is that whatever happens to them now becomes applied and multiplied to the demographic of choice, hers being the person of color demographic, which isn't intentionally generalized at all, I'm sure.
Indigenous who? And what the hell is gender non-conforming? What are all these labels? What is she even talking about?
I wish I knew too, but unfortunately, Zarna is a pseudo-intellectual on top of being a perpetual victim. Only time will tell, eyes wide shut.
Why does this woman think she can speak for everyone? I mean, who the hell is she anyways? What a drama queen.
Why, she's a person of color. Person of color? She experiences a lot of things and stuff, and she has gone through a whole lot of sexual assault and things. And other people of color do too, so, you know, oppression.
The challenge is that it is very hard for those who are marginalized, such as women of color, to express how they feel without being called the angry brown woman or the angry black woman, or the nagging woman, or crazy.
It is also hard to let someone explain why they aren't sexually assaulting you when you constantly speak over them, convinced they did because you didn't get what you want. But then again, Hugh Mungus What is a cisgender white male who dared make a joke at his own expense. Not to mention, the video in question bears no semblance of what race or nationality you were, so to suppose that others are judging you for your skin color because you are judging others for their skin color is called a projection. One of many tactics of the raging SJW.
My God, she just won't stop talking. But sometimes I do wonder what women of color are thinking when I make a crass racial or sexual joke in front of them, and then I say, just kidding. And then afterwards, why do they always turn me down when I ask them to dinner?
It is very fascinating to dig into the mind of someone who uses puppets to speak irrevocably nonsensical reasoning in regards to one person of color, so that they can reinforce the notion that all Indian women will at one point experience this. It's almost like the statistic of college women having to deal with rape at least once or twice in their life, despite only 3% of those accused of rape are actually convicted of rape. Just another hair on this head of a perpetual victim.
It's because of a phenomenon called white fragility and male fragility. White liberals and men in general have been told over and over again that if they just never use the N-word and they never talk about race and they never physically molest anyone, then they're not racist or sexist.
So Zarna, I ask of this personally to you. How would one not be a racist or a sexist if they demonstrate the merits of not being a racist or sexist? It's rhetorical, I know, because you certainly won't bring up my questions for discussions, but impose your own questions onto me. It's painfully cringeworthy to see someone still find someone racist and sexist when they disclose all the tenets of not being such, and categorize it as male fragility or white fragility, despite her claims that patriarchy would normally allow white men not to feel guilty at all about their blatant racism, if any. It's an interesting quandary we found ourselves in.
So when I point out that actually the system of power we live in ensures that all white people are racist and all men are sexist because they profit from a system that marginalizes people of color and non-males, they attack me, just as they've attacked women of color for centuries to retain their power structure.
This is a slippery slope mechanism, not one commonly used by an SJW, but Zarna, being the wacko that she is, employs it to full discretion. She does not demonstrate how exactly white people and white men specifically carry out these enactments to marginalize people. She only takes the mere fact that more white men have higher salaries and are committing most of the crimes, disproportionately to black people. This lack of accountability she glosses over shows, as she has double, triple, and quadrupled down on the video showing how loony she really is, trying to make it seem like she was tackling a big issue at hand when it was an interview about some building being constructed. Zarna also does not realize that calling all white people racist and all men sexist bluntly, by definition, makes her sexist and racist. Hypocrites do hit a thorn in my side, but alas, I will keep a stern yet calm demeanor to highlight all the edges of this perpetual victim.
Whoa! She's the sexist one. She's the racist one. Why does she hate me?
Sometimes it is odd that she self-refutes herself with these dancing monkeys, showing that without any evidence and using a result to make a conclusion that she hates white men completely out of principle and of nothing else. This could be Poe's law in effect, or that Zarna is so stupid that she thinks the guy making this accusation of her is somehow ridiculous.
Yeah, so I make more money because I'm a man, and I have a lot of privilege, and my voice matters in every sphere of life, but I didn't ask for that. That doesn't make me racist or sexist.
I do like the smug sarcasm emanating from this guy, sidestepping any work on his end to get to the point where he is, and to conflate earning with being paid once, which is once again, intellectual dishonesty at her finest. Also, notice that the caption reads, "White men get paid over all women, despite that Asians get paid more than whites, and that the percentages only show by demographic and not by sex." This just shows that Zarna is emphatic about race wholesale.
She talks as if men don't have any problems. I haven't had a raise in 3 years.
You would be right, bucko, and ironically enough, Zarna would say that any problem a man faces is their problem alone, but any problem a non-white, non-male person experiences, well, it's completely out of their hands.
I mean, yeah, I haven't spoken up for women or done anything constructive to help women or people of color, and I take my privileges without question, and I live happily in my own little bubble, but that doesn't mean that I profit from their suffering.
Hello, Grace. It's good to see you again. How about we talk about how I'm going to rape you and that you can do nothing about it except for calling the cops, speaking to family members, getting the press involved, all that, but otherwise, you can do nothing about it.
It's not my fault they're marginalized. I didn't marginalize them, so why should I do anything to help them?
So a quote is now enough evidence for a statistic? This is an interesting case of confirmation bias on Zarna's part. Did she take this statement as if it was fact, or did she go into the methodology of the results? Even if it was true, how does she know that the reason for the men hurting the women was completely because they hate women? Surely the number would be higher if all men are misogynists, right?
Just because I make more money and have access to all the education and resources and housing and jobs.
Which women do too. You cannot have an equal opportunity system that also gives women a step up over men simply by the existence of them having a vagina. Women, as a matter of fact, take up more of the college degrees than men nationally, and women aged 35 and over earn more than men of the same age. Are you going to decry sexism in the name of man, or are you going to apply a vicious double standard to this?
Recently, I was sexually harassed by a man in public on camera, and the news stations posted the video without my permission with the question, "Do you consider this sexual harassment?"
If I am an ideologue who uses the term sexual harassment so flexibly that it can be applied to a joke, then yes. If I'm not, then no. Zarna, you do realize that your definition of sexual harassment does not prevail over the law's definition of sexual harassment, right? And that you willingly recorded and uploaded this video to the web to the discretion of others that you sought would have the very same definition of sexual assault as you had. As far as anyone is concerned, you had a hand in your own upbringing. But I digress. A perpetual victim is never truly able to take fault for anything, and so it's everyone else's fault for bringing such attention to her crazy behavior.
This led to a lot of people attacking me and going after me all over social media. This is what patriarchy does. It causes everyone to attack the victim, the one who is most vulnerable.
This is the core of the perpetual victim. Zarna, an unreasonable, unfathomably dogmatic ideologue, screaming about how she was sexually assaulted by a man she confronted, shoving a camera into his face, and when she didn't get what she wanted, she used the sexual assault claim to make him guilty of nothing, for she knew that in doing so would draw all the attention to her, the poor, hopeless victim. The most contentious resource of a perpetual victim is of the ego of being a victim, as you get the privy of 1,000 shoulders to cry on without actually warranting the necessity of being a victim of anything. So of course, it comes as no surprise that Zarna describes herself as a victim in this scenario. It's the most ideal case for people to drop money to her GoFundMe in the same vein that Anita struck gold on, and to keep her relevancy as a marginalized person of color from flatlining. This comes with the grave consequence of forever being a victim in the eyes of everyone, for you establish your identity as nothing more than a sad sap who needs a million tissues to weep and constant attention lest she feels being ignored.
This protects the system of power, which is male sexual dominance.
Ignoring the possibility that women also had a hand in the comments, but she already demonstrated what race/gender traitors who those women are, just to keep the perpetual victim fire burning hot.
How do we even know she's telling the truth about sexual harassment? I saw that video in the online reactions from all the men, and yeah, they were threatening rape and violence and death, all while accusing her of overreacting.
If you are not convinced based on the reaction and of the video, then I have something that is very easy for you to do. Compare the court's definition of sexual harassment, and then see if it applies to when Zarna accuses our shitlord and savior, Hugh Mungus of sexual harassment. I'll do it for you. Title 7 of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 defines sexual harassment as any unwelcome sexual events, requests for sexual favors, and other verbal or physical behavior of a sexual nature that is detrimental to a positive work environment. Now, we all know that Hugh Mungus did not make any sexual advances to Zarna. In fact, he was backing away as soon as she started screeching from the top of her lungs about him sexually assaulting her. She accuses him of sexually assaulting her by just simply telling her his name. As a matter of fact, I would say that this video shows evidence of verbal harassment on account of Zarna, chasing down a security guard with constant slurs about him being a sexist and racist, but I'm no judge. That's for the security guard to decide, but I say this video is overwhelming evidence of it. Now I wonder how long Zarna would face jail for compared to a man who'd do the same thing. As a quick caveat as well, internet comments should be taken with a grain of salt. Most people make these comments in jest and are meant to spur a reaction from said crazies like Zarna. Going on.
But just because she's putting her physical safety on the line to talk about this doesn't mean she's right.
She was not physically assaulted, and once again, indeed, you have just proven that Zarna is full of shit. Zarna, might I suggest getting some lackeys from the Lacey Green department? Or even Rebecca Watson's, if you so may.
Their main complaint was that I raised my voice. They questioned my sanity because I spoke up.
I sometimes question my sanity when digging into the psychology of one who thinks they did a great public service by calling a man a sexist for saying their name as a joke on themselves. You are not merely raising your voice, you made an attempt to silence other people's dissent of your accusation and try to claim victory on your part without any evidence to the contrary, Zarna.
A patriarchal society wants women to shut up, and we have a long history of men confining women to mental asylums because those women didn't behave the way men wanted them to behave.
By all means, keep going on about how you are a lone pup getting torn alive by the vicious dogs, but if anyone is smugly trying to make other people shut up, it's you. But what am I thinking? I'm dealing with the perpetual victim of all things. Nothing is ever their fault, and anything they do, well, it's actually the other people doing it. If you're acting crazy because, well, you are acting crazy, that's just misogyny.
We have a long history of men saying women are crazy and emotional when they dare to speak up about abuse. We have a long history of those same men lashing out at women, assaulting them, murdering them.
Taking the benefit of the doubt really does weigh heavy on the mind, and I, for one, am having a real hard time taking anything this bitch says seriously, and doing this with a feeble attempt to sound like a zookeeper examining an animal. Zarna, men don't just commit murder because they are crazy. There's a lot of premeditated murder that occurs, like they can get something from another person, or it could be in self-defense. You trying to switch the goalposts to make it seem like the men are crazy isn't helpful on your part, especially when you take one person's comment like as if that is the statement that all men side with. I know there are crazy and not so crazy women, and you, unfortunately, are fucking crazy.
I don't get emotional, okay? I'm a man.
So, remember when you were talking about white fragility and male fragility and said that men act out emotionally on women? Yeah, sounds a bit like you just defeated your own point. Also, so many strawmans that you can make a cornfield with it. Men can get emotional, it's just that it's not very productive to think with feels.
So those men were furious because I screamed to high heaven about what happened to me. Even the security guards who witnessed it didn't call the cops to help me. They called the cops on me because I was making noise.
One of those security guards you followed because you had the bright idea to follow your harasser, not realizing that in doing so you were harassing him. At the point where you couldn't say anything poignant other than, are you going to put him in jail? When the guards were merely trying to calm the issue, yes. You were just oinking your concerns at thin air. You assumed the security staff were going to arrest Hugh Mungus, or show him out, when he did nothing wrong, and he showed himself out because having conversation with you is like talking to a mirror. It all reflects back at him. I don't know how much of this cult-like video I can take. I'm generally uncomfortable staring at Zarna's oddly calm face with this weird violin stabbing my eardrums.
And the cops arrived and demanded that I talk to them alone, all while they kept their hands on their guns.
Completely reasonable, since you lashed at a guy for telling you his name. I wonder what you would have done if he actually sexually assaulted you. Also, you were making a big scene and the cops wanted you to actually express in what way you were sexually assaulted without an audience to vamp up, which is another reason why you were yelling so you could try to gain sympathy with an audience when you couldn't get it from the person you were accusing.
They didn't ask me if I was okay.
Obviously, you are not, especially when you made this 4-part video, as well as the way you went at the security guards. It's kind of self-evident.
They didn't suggest getting a female officer for me to talk to.
That really does say a lot about you, doesn't it? You really fucking think that if you had a female officer, that she'll somehow sympathize with you on a base level because she's a female too. That's fucking patronizing on a whole other level. It'd be like if I asked my mom if I could have some cookies and she said no, and then go to my father and ask him the same question so that I could get the response I wanted. So fucking selfish.
They didn't give a damn about my safety.
Because your safety was not compromised in any way, you indignantly leering at the guards for not taking your broad interpretation of sexual assault into account is not an infringement on your safety.
Because cops don't protect women, they protect the patriarchal power structure.
If that's true, then why aren't you dead on the fucking ground? You can make an argument that the cops are a bit too authoritative when it comes to dealing with crimes, but on a gender-based level, you ain't got shit. And your little 5-minute Excel graph doesn't convince me either. With no source and nothing to base the methodology on, it's about as well researched as the Neo-Sarkeesian's Tropes vs. Women project, which I'm sure you are watching as you make this load of shit.
This sounds like crazy cop bashing to me. Her voice is annoying, so it's no wonder why men were alarmed.
Thanks for the ad hominem, white guilt male number 437-B. But that's not an argument for patriarchy. All you got are straw men in your field and not one fucking grain of evidence to flick at me.
Yeah, it's kind of sexy though. I love that accent. But you'll probably scream that I sexually harassed her if I say anything about it.
Judging from the fact that she included in the list of straw men already, I'm inclined to believe you.
Women.
Why did she get so upset over his dick joke? I mean, yeah, we burned women at the stake and stoned them and raped them and beat them and sell them into sexual slavery. But can't they take a joke?
It wasn't a dick joke. It was a dad joke. If he said humongous cock, it would have been a dick joke. Also, to presuppose that because we were bad to women in the past that exempts us from making stupid jokes is horrible reasoning on Zarna's part. A lot of women burned women at the stake during the Salem witch trials, which means that you making a joke at my expense is unacceptable today. Jesus Christ, Zarna, get some better strawmans. Holy shit.
It's not like the world is a dangerous place for women.
I'll start with your toes and work slowly up to your bleeding heart. Assuming that I don't get drafted for the selective service and men have to sign in order to vote, but women don't, but soon.
And by the way, it's not sexual harassment if you're not at work, and it's not rape if you're married to him.
Who in their right fucking mind would make such callous reasoning like that? Zarna, you are the one who believes this tripe. This is the shit you hang over your head but try to drape it over everyone else in the room like an umbrella. Also, that sexual harassment act I mentioned earlier only included a workplace environment but did not exclude in a private sector. So to assume that not mentioning something means that now it's okay to harass a woman who isn't working is just loopy. But only someone like Zarna would figure that, huh?
I want to say this to all my sisters and queer and trans siblings.
I want to preach disingenuous platitudes to people I use as shields for my argument before making said argument.
We don't have to take the injustices, even if you think they're just little injustices.
From the faintest yawning to the most innocuous Twitter post, anything and everything is an injustice to us.
Permitting those little injustices is what leads to the larger horrors of rape and violence that we all know so well.
Those of which you never actually experienced but want to stand here on your invisible pedestal preaching it like you got a book of indictments when all you got is a spurious claim of sexual assault that demonstrates you were not sexually assaulted by any definition other than your own.
We have to dismantle our own internalized patriarchy.
We have to unlearn everything, go back to square one, decolonize our minds. This is not creating about an intellectual space, it's about creating a home here.
If we stand up for ourselves and each other, we can change this world.
We can make a world where everyone has to curb everything they say lest they commit a thought crime at the expense of someone somewhere who maybe might possibly get offended by it at some point. Isn't that the kind of world you want to live in?
Power concedes nothing without demand, so we must demand safety. We must demand an end to rape culture. We don't exist for men.
You need respect and don't want to work to earn that respect. You want people to assume that whenever someone comes up with an accusation of rape, that they must be right, and that you want to paint this idea that women exist for men and that men and women exist for each other mutually. You want to find any reason to be a perpetual victim at the cost of everyone else's livelihood, so it be reinforced in your own echo chamber.
I never said that women exist for me. That's so unfair. I do think that women should put in the effort to look nice, though. Like shave their legs and have a sexy figure and wear nice clothes. And they should have a job and bring in money so we can be equal.
How dare he think that women want to be stay-at-home moms and breadwinners because they express that desire so openly. And how dare women want attention from guys because it makes them feel good about themselves. Patriarchy, I say.
And they should take the pill because I don't want to wear a condom. And yes, I do need sex. All men need sex. How can we be happy without sex? That's why women are there.
All men need sex.
Jesus Christ, was that the Borg I just heard for a moment there? I don't get why showing a preference to the woman taking the pill instead of using a condom is somehow misogynistic. If the woman wants to do that, then by all means let them. Also, women want sex too. They're just better at hiding that need than men are. We are all biologically driven to sex. It's a natural process of procreation.
We can encourage the men who actually give a damn about protecting others.
Which is none, since you called all men misogynist and racist, since they are only out for themselves apparently. The only way not to be misogynist and racist is to not be a man, so now I'm attack helicopter gender.
To work with us to dismantle this patriarchal system. Patriarchy hurts men too.
Twice in a row, you demonstrated that we do not live in a patriarchy, or that the patriarchy we currently live in is so awful that it actually benefits women more often than men does. But do you see me throwing my voice at other people about there being a matriarchy? Okay, I have had enough of this cult disco that Zarna is trying to pull off here. The crazy violin, the old lady tapestry in the background, the faceless mouths that look like they're trying to eat my fucking face off, Zarna's cold contempt of delusion smeared on her face. It's just so off-putting for me that I'm just going to stop it here. I'm not going to be able to sit through the other three parts if all she has is some clickbaity articles and self-made, self-fulfilling charts and comments of which she couldn't take seriously anyway, as they're made for the express purpose to troll her. Zarna, you're absolutely fucking insane. I sincerely hope you do get some mental help to fix that ideological tumor that has lodged into your brain, especially that perpetual victim ward that functions as your third eye. It's humongous!